A lot of people are reacting to viral clips of pastors and churches, some laughing, some offended, some saying it's mocking God. So the question is it okay to critique or make fun of the church without crossing the line into mockery? Drewski, a young man known as an hilarious content creator, skit has gone viral. Some people laughed, others said it mocked God. Today we're going to get to it a little deeper and break down what the scriptures say about it. Some of these viral clips show expensive props, boats, cars, dramatic entrances. People ask, is this ministry, mockery, or covering up income?
That's a great question, Tracy, and it deserves more than a comment section answer. The young man wasn't preaching theology. He's doing what comedians do: exaggerate cultural moments people already recognize. Comedy often exposes what we've normalized. The question isn't whether the joke was funny, it's why it resonated with so many.
There was a moment, the scene at the $400,000 car, where he disrespects his parishioner, asking, does he pay his tithe and offerings? And when the man said no, he told him to back up, but a little more explicit, spit his gum out at him. Now that part was funny, but then I immediately became sad because that's really happening to people in the church that are in dire need of help. And if they are not current on tithe, they get disrespected or get pushed to the side. Please go back and play our video with Rabbi Ezra on the tithe. It reveals so much, because even though it was acting, it really wasn't exaggeration. That was in reenactment. There's a scene in The Nutty Professor starring Eddie Murphy, the comedy club scene. Sherman brings his crush Carla. Purdy, played by Jada Pinkett Smith, to the show, and the comedian absolutely humiliates him on stage. That scene captures something real, how two things can be happening at the same time. Someone can be having the time of their life while someone else is being publicly humiliated. The comedian was intentionally trying to humiliate, but it forced Sherman to take a good look at himself and change, because everything the comic said was true. That's how comedy works sometimes. It tells the truth, but depending on where it lands, that truth can either feel light or feel very heavy. That's why I thought the skit was clever and comical overall. We're seeing the same tension play out right now with comedians like Dave Chappelle, where artistic expression, truth-telling, and humor collide with real pain.
That's a fair question, and it's one people are asking because they're trying to make sense of what they're seeing. The Bible never condemns excellence or creativity in worship, but it does warn us about excess that distracts from the message, and spectacle that replaces substance. When props become the focal point instead of Christ, it's right for believers to pause and ask, what's the purpose here? So the goal isn't mockery, and it isn't blind defense, it's wisdom. Because Scripture tells us to test the spirits, not just applaud the presentation. Matthew 23:5 says, but all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad the phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments. Matthew 23 is Jesus' public rebuke of the religious leadership of his day, specifically the scribes and Pharisees. He is speaking openly. This is not casual criticism, it's accountability.
Okay, now, Pastor Joe, scriptures like this one is the reason I created this podcast. I know the beginning of the scripture because the first part is always cited. This is the first time I have read or heard the scripture in its entirety. What are or is phylacteries, and how did they enlarge the borders of their garments? Please break it down for us.
Phylacteries Jesus uses in Matthew 23:5 were small leather boxes that contained scripture. Jewish men wore them during prayer based on God's command in Deuteronomy to keep his word on their minds and close to their hearts. Originally, this was a beautiful symbol. It wasn't about show, it was about remembrance and obedience. But Jesus points out that some religious leaders began making their phylacteries larger, not because they loved God more, but because they wanted to be noticed. To enlarge the borders of their garments. The borders refer to tzitzit, the tassels, or fringes on the corners of Jewish garments. Tzitzit were meant to serve as reminders of God's commands, prompt obedience to keep people mindful of holiness. They were functional reminders, not fashion statements. When Jesus says the Pharisees enlarged these tassels, he was saying they made them longer, thicker, more visible. They exaggerated them for public recognition. Again, not inherently sinful, but dangerous when the motive shifts. The border wasn't the problem. The desire to be seen was. God isn't impressed by what we wear, say, or show. He's looking at what's shaping our hearts. Comparing that to today, enlarging the borders might look like exaggerated spiritual language, visible displays meant to impress, faith used as branding, religious authority amplified through aesthetics. Again, not inherently sinful, but very dangerous when the motive shifts.
And I want to be clear about something. We can't take the mishaps, misuses, or failures of some churches or the behavior of some pastors and priests and use that to indict the entire church. That wouldn't be fair and it wouldn't be true. There are churches quietly serving, loving, and changing lives every single day, feeding families, restoring hope, walking with people through their hardest moments. We don't want to let the failures of a few overshadow the faithfulness of many. Holding leadership accountable and honoring what the church has done right are not opposing ideas. They can exist at the same time. The goal here isn't to tear the church down, it's to protect what's sacred about it. Because when the church is healthy, lives are changed for the better, and that story deserves to be told too.